Previously on the Ron Van Dam Show.
Excuse me. And if I'm having a shitty day, I'll make sure you do as well. No urine test, nothing. They're getting into something they have no idea, contorted into a donut.
And now, today's episode of the Ron Van Dam Show.
On the air everywhere, this is New England Broadcasting.
Welcome to the Ron Van Dam Show. Hold on tight, things can get a bit weird, if you like that sort of thing.
Anybody want a sandwich?
Whatever.
Good morning.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. It's the Ron Van Dam Show.
Oh, really? Seriously? You gotta be kidding.
Sit back, relax, grab a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, whatever your liquid libation may be in the morning, and join us as we take a look at the world around us. As much as it's a pleasure to be with you, the pleasure is actually all yours. And now, here's your host, Ron Van Dam.
Thank you very much, Julie. Welcome to the program. How are you today? Boy, did you catch this show on a good day or what? Today, my guest is fascinating. A lot of us grew up with the television show Friends. Do you remember that show? Famous theme song that became popular even on the radio. 6 friends living in New York City, one of the most popular sitcoms of all time. Today we have an author of a book called I'll Be There. The book looks at all the surrounding circumstances producing that television show Friends, about the cast members themselves, things that went on behind the scenes, how they handled various events out of their control on the show. It's fascinating. That author's with us today. A little bit later on in the program, you did come on a good day. Good choice. Nice move. You did something right for a change. That's coming up shortly. Very shortly. Do you want a sandwich? Seriously, I feel like I'm a bad host. I just sit here and I talk and I ramble on, and you have the courtesy to stay glued to your chair. I really appreciate that. Can I get you something? Would you like something? Do you want deli meat slapped between 2 slices of bread? Are you into that? I got condiments. I got a slathering of condiments if you need them. Yeah, I was talking to a person yesterday. Doesn't happen frequently, but it was a real person. And we're talking about Panera Bread, and I was joking around. I do stand-up comedy every once in a while, and I always do this bit about Panera Bread where you go in there and you get a sandwich on bread, and then they say, what do you want on the side? What do you have? Bread. It's that, it's really funny. Bread or an apple is pretty much all they have at Panera Bread. Let's broaden the horizons, get a little potato salad coleslaw in there. What do you say? Anyway, they never listen to me. So I don't understand the bread bowl thing. Apparently, you can have soup in a bread bowl. This is a piece of bread, a little loaf of bread. It's hollowed out, and you put the soup in it, and you eat the soup out of the bread bowl. And I don't know why, personally. I don't know why I need to eat soup out of a bread bowl when they have perfectly fine ceramic bowls available. But I guess it's interesting. I don't get it. But my curiosity precedes me. I don't understand how you can pour a hot liquid into something made of bread and it doesn't leak out the bottom all over your pants. I don't understand that. Yet I see people at Panera Bread eating their soup in a bread bowl and they seem perfectly fine. And I'm wondering, what are you doing? How do you do this? A friend told me that they actually bake the bottom of the bread bowl so it's crusty. I don't care how much you bake bread. If you pour liquid on it, it's going to leak. I don't get it. This is one of the things in life that I can't figure out. I actually Googled this because it bothered me so much. I was about to have a mental breakdown because I couldn't figure out this bread bowl concept. As tasty as it may sound. So I Google the thing. And I Google, how does a bread bowl stay together when soup is poured into it? And I'll tell you something, you can Google it yourself. It's not in there. It's the one thing I've ever Googled. It's not there. No one ever asked this question. What am I, some type of a soothsayer or something? Am I blazing a path of curiosity when it comes to bread bowls? I couldn't find an answer in the Google thing. Oh, there were definitions and pictures of bread bowls and how to make a bread bowl, but there was nothing in description as to how to stop the damn thing from leaking. I decided to make my own bread bowl. I got a small loaf of bread. I think you call it a boule. I don't know. It's a small little loaf of bread. And it looks like the bun that is on top of a woman's head when she ties her hair up and, at a wedding or something. That's what the bread bowl looks like to me. So you hollow the thing out, and then I poured soup into it, and it got all over my pants, just what I thought. There is no answer. It tells you online how, but it doesn't work. This drove me crazy. I think I could figure out how Jesus turned water into wine. And I also can figure out most of those magic trick illusions in Vegas when they saw a woman in half. They're actually not sawing the woman in half. They just saw her like in quarters or something. Or no, it's a trick, obviously. But the bread bowl, that's not a trick. I don't know how they do that. Someday I'll figure it out. I'm sure some of you listening have had the bread bowl, the soup in the bread bowl. And it's been quite successful. I can't pull it off. I have no idea how to do that. And you know what? I think I'm okay with it. Ron, you've spent 10 minutes talking about pouring liquid into a bread bowl. And you told me this was going to be an incredible show. What's up with this? Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, I have no right wasting your time like this. We'll be right back.
You are listening to The Ron Van Dam Show, the podcast world's version of painful itching and swelling. You know they sell a cream for that, right? It's over the counter. Works really well. I've had to use it a lot.
I grew up with many of these iconic television shows. I would run to the television set every week when Friends was on. I believe it was on a Thursday night, if I recall, on NBC. But I go back even further than that. And I'm not as old as you think I probably am. But I go to the nostalgia television stations, the television networks, and I watch the older black and white shows. And I marvel at them because it was a time in society we were repressed. Yes, you couldn't curse in the house. You couldn't curse on television. When the kids went to a baseball game, they wore suits and ties if they went to a big stadium out in public. These were the days when people had respect for each other. When they went out on a Sunday to church or even to the store, they dressed up big time. Women wore hats, men wore jackets and ties. I'm telling you, man, it's not so much that it was a stifling clothing experience. It's that people respected each other. They had pride in the way that they looked automatically because that's what society was. I kind of think that's wonderful. I think now we're way too loose. Way too loose. All the boundaries have been knocked down in every way, shape, and form. You know, children need boundaries, they need rules, they need regulations, they seek that. As adults, we kind of do as well. I'm really into respect. But there's one facet that I don't respect. And I'm sorry, but it's Ron, be careful now. It's judges and the clergy. It's not that I disrespect them, but I refuse to stand for them. I don't understand. I've been to jury duty quite a few times in my life. As a matter of fact, they seek me out. Every 3 years, I get a notice in the mail saying you've been selected for jury duty. And I tell people this, and they go, that's odd. I've never been selected. So why are they after me? So I go down to the courthouse, because if you don't, that's actually, they could arrest you, actually. They could shoot you. So I get out of the courthouse, and I always go into this, this jury pool, and then they send you down to a courtroom, and the judge walks in to explain what the case is. And the bailiff says, all rise. And my response is, no. What am I rising for? Another human being is walking into the room, and just because he or she has a robe on, I got to stand up. Let me tell you something. I get up every morning in the winter. I put a robe on. Nobody stands up for me. Well, these are respected people. Why? Why are they Sure, I respect what they do, but do I have to stand up when they walk into a room? Are you serious? I don't stand up because someone walks in a room. That bothers me. It's the same thing in church. When the clergy walks in, the priest, whatever the case may be, depending on your religious choice of the day, and the priest says, please rise, I feel like saying, thanks for asking, but I'm kind of comfortable sitting here. I can have a relationship with God sitting on his bench as opposed to having to stand up because you told me to. And you didn't even say Simon Says. I mean, if the priest said Simon Says, I may stand up. I may play along if I'm in a giddy mood. I don't like being told when to do something. It bothers me. I have respect, but only to the point of common sense. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not putting the clergy down. I'm not putting down the judicial system. I'm just saying when you really break it on down, it just feels very odd to me that in today's free society, that when someone tells me to stand, I must do it. Now, if I don't stand up in a church because the priest says everybody rise, I don't think anything happens to me. I don't think they're even going to throw me out of the church. I think they're just going to all look at me and say, you're an idiot because you're not doing what everybody else is doing, Simon Says. But in a courtroom, if you don't stand up when the judge walks into the courtroom, they will actually, that's contempt of court. What? Are you serious? How can you arrest me or fine me because I didn't stand up? That's a police state. That I don't get. And that's why I can't be a good juror, because they piss me off immediately. Don't piss me off. If you want me to participate on a jury to help out my fellow citizens and society, don't piss me off right off the bat. Please rise. No, it's not please rise. You're gonna arrest me. In church, it's please rise. Thanks for saying please. In a courtroom, it's all rise. Well, I don't think so. I guess I'm a rebel. I'm a rebel with respect, I guess is what I am. I suppose I am that. Well, let's get back to the respect thing. The television shows, man. Friends, I'll be there for you. This lovely author is going to join us momentarily. As a matter of fact, right after this break, we're going to get into the Friends mood. Are you ready to get into the Friends mood? Here we go.
Hi, this is Bob Robinson from Bob's Handy Around the House. I'm a local handyman. I've been in business for the last 50 years on my own, doing light repair work in our area. Whatever you need done. Carpentry, painting, floors, tiling, yard work. I can do it all for you. I'll come to your home and do the work for a very reasonable fee. Naked. I should probably mention that I will be naked while I do this work. Buck naked, not a stitch on me, waving in the wind, in my birthday suit, showing what God gave me, naked as a jaybird. I'll be naked the whole time. I show up naked. I do the work naked. You pay me while I'm naked. Bob's Handy Around the House, Bob Robinson. You can look me up on Facebook, where I am naked.
This way, your job's a joke, you broke, your love life's the away. It's like you're always stuck in second gear, when it hasn't been your day, your week, your month, or even your year. But I'll be there for you when the rain starts to fall.
Hi, Kelsey.
Hi there. How's it going?
Great. Kelsey Miller joins us. She's written the book, I'll Be There For You, the one about friends. It's a fascinating book, and she's a very successful author of previous work as well. Hey, I've got to tell you, as a talk show host, I read tons of books every year. This is one of the most enjoyable books I have read. Congratulations to you.
Oh, my goodness. Well, thank you very much. That's a lovely compliment.
I think also you chose a subject that immediately connected people to your book. Friends was one of my favorite series in casting and in writing, directing, the whole bit. And this is a fascinating reunion for me as far as that time period is concerned. Why were you so attracted to this subject?
Well, I think for the reason you mentioned, which is that it played such an enormous role in so many of our lives. It had such a massive cultural impact, so big that I don't think that we all fully recognize it. You know, it's a show that debuted over 24 years ago, and yet here we are still talking about it, still watching it, still one of the most popular shows on television and streaming. True. And I really wanted to explore both the show, but also the phenomenon, the Friends phenomenon, you know? Yeah,
it's for sure. Very similar to Seinfeld, both, of course, taking place in New York, but similar in the sense that, in my estimation, it started off kind of okay and then built in momentum to the point where it was brilliant. It seemed to get very comfortable with itself, and then all of a sudden things started sparking. Did you find the same thing?
I did. I think that they had a certain amount of, you know, they had a really high energy from the beginning, and the cast had that incredible chemistry, and the writing was strong from the beginning. But I do think it took them a little bit of time to find their footing. And I think particularly by season 3, where, you know, that's where they kind of graduate into a more grown-up show and become something that's really funny and just crackles with energy, but also has like an emotional resonance to it.
It almost seemed like toward the end they were running out of scenarios. I think there was every combination of every friend going through every possible situation. Do you think that how did it end indeed? Was it a choice? What happened?
Well, you know, I think if the network had its druthers, then Friends would still be on the air today. But, yeah, I mean, the cast really, they had that sort of unionization. They were really a union of 6, and they would come together when it came for every contract negotiation and vote together about whether or not they wanted to stay on. And I think that what kept the show going for so long was that connection between them. The fact that they really did have such an incredible working relationship and a friendship among them. Yeah, I mean, as you say, when they get to season 10, there's some weird things that go on. I'm not a fan of the Joey and Rachel episodes, but it's surprisingly strong, and I think the finale is one of the best television finales of all time. In my opinion.
Yeah, well, it ended the way it was supposed to end, I think, which was very satisfying. Yeah. And that it turned it into a nice thing as compared to other series that get too bizarre at the end, and then they go like, wow, that was not worthy of everything that had gone on previously. Let me ask you, when I watch the reruns now, I see the World Trade Centers in the background at the opening of the establishing shots, and that always grabs me. How did they handle that scenario when they were actually in the middle of it?
Yeah, that was a really complicated issue for a lot of television shows, but I think Friends in particular, because it was so popular and it took place in downtown Manhattan. Yeah. And I think that the producers made a really smart choice, was that they decided to show and not tell, because they didn't think it would be appropriate to talk about this openly or to do a quote unquote very special episode of Friends. Nobody wanted that from the show. What they wanted was to be able to revisit something that was familiar and funny and reliable. And so they did things like putting little visual cues throughout the show, like, if you recall, after 9/11, American flags popped up everywhere. They popped up on Friends. The characters wore FDNY T-shirts. Yes. And, they put a little title card up on the first episode that aired afterwards, which was dedicated to the people of New York City. Because the people who created the show were, they'd all lived in New York, and the series meant a lot to them. And in many ways, New York was the inspiration for the show. So they really wanted to treat them with respect after that.
Yeah. It's interesting now, as our country gets very divided in their relationships, that there was a lesson to Friends, I would suppose, that we could probably, embrace now.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. If only because that was a show that was so universally adored. I mean, of course, there were people that didn't like it, but it was a show that was incredibly popular in almost 200 countries. It ended up being syndicated in. It's like a cultural touchstone for so many people.
Yeah. The storylines were, I don't know if they were so extreme for that time period, because other things on other shows were also quite extreme, but Friends hit a lot of different scenarios that weren't necessarily mainstream, as far as relationships and having babies and single parenting and that kind of thing.
Yeah, they did. They did. When you look back on it now, it all seems very sort of sterile and tame, but frankly, the writers did have to push a lot to get a lot of those storylines on the air, or even something like, a mention of condoms was really hard to get on there. And they were saying, but wait a minute, aren't we talking about, safe, responsible sex amongst adults here? And they were like, no, you can't talk about condoms. But yeah, as you point out, there's divorce, there's single parenthood, there's like blended families, there's, same-sex parents in the show. There was the first lesbian wedding on television, all of that.
Yeah. Was NBC very permissive of the Friends topics because it was so successful? Were they leaning more toward, you can do pretty much whatever you want?
Well, it's funny because I think there was a perception of that, and I think really, if anybody could do what they wanted early on, Seinfeld probably had more leeway. I mean, if you recall, there was this famous blackout night that they did, where all of the shows in the New York NBC universe experienced a blackout during one Thursday night, and it was really good. It was a good, it was a good stunt. It worked, and Seinfeld was the one show that was like, no, we don't want to do it, and they just didn't do it.
Let's see.
Yeah, but I think by towards the end, Friends probably had a lot of leeway. But in the beginning, they definitely had to negotiate quite a lot.
Yeah, some of the cast members had some personal issues. I know that one was alcoholism, drugs, while the series was still going. How did that pan out?
Yeah, one of them, Matthew Perry, dealt with prescription drug abuse and alcoholism, which he was very open about, which I think is very admirable. And I think all of his cast members were open about the fact that it was really, really hard because they did, not only because they had a strong friendship, but because they were, each other's colleagues, and they had to rely on each other, and it's an ensemble show, and they, I think it was a really rough period for all of them. But they all talked a lot about the fact that they got through it. And to their credit, I think nobody's really told salacious stories about that. I think they've managed to keep whatever went on behind the scenes amongst themselves. I have a lot of respect for them for doing that.
What's amazing is that each and every one of them, all six, after the show was over, hit their own heights in their own individual ways and continued to be quite effective in the business as many of them are now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're all still out there. Yeah. And the fact is, being on a successful show like Friends, they had the ability to go off and do what they wanted afterwards. But they also were always going to be recognized for those characters. And so I think that a lot of them have had to sort of find the balance, between fighting against that while maybe just rolling with it, if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. It's a great book, and now don't say anything. I'm going to say something. You can't say anything. Pick up this book. It's called I'll Be There For You, the one about friends. It's a great book. It is so much fun and so insightful and just brings you back to a place that you want to be at. And I told some people that we were doing this interview, and they said, "Oh, when you finish with the book, can I read it?" I said, "Nah, goodbye your own." That's the way I am. But,
Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no, it's great, and I can't wait for your next work. So, is there a website that we can follow?
Yes, absolutely. You can find me on kelseymiller.com. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Ms. Kelsey Miller. You can find me on Facebook at Kelsey Miller, and you can find the book pretty much anywhere you want to buy a book.
Yes, they still sell books. This is great. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. Hey, thank you so much for your time.
Great for me.
I know, it's good for you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, hopefully
thank you.
Okay, take care, Kelsey.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's fun. Was that fun for you? Yeah, that's good. Good stuff. Well, we've just about run out of time for today. I want to remind you to vote. Please vote. I don't care who you are, where you are, what you had for breakfast, anything like that. Just vote, vote, vote. Go out and vote. It's part of your responsibility. I'm not asking you to stand up. I'm just asking you to go out and vote because as a citizen of this United States, it's one of the few and only duties that you have besides paying taxes. That's also a pain in the ass. But voting is not a pain in the ass. It's an opportunity for you to express yourself and where your life is going to go and how your country is going to go. And if you're like me, and I hope you do like me, and you want to get back to normality somehow, let's temper that with a crazy president and a Congress that can somehow balance this whole thing. This whole country is based on balance. You've got to have checks and balances. That's the way this whole Constitution was written. It's the foundation of our country. Not all on one side, not all on the other, but the balance is what makes it work. So go out and vote. Will you please do so? Please, thank you so much for listening to me. I'll be back again the next weekday that rolls around. Until then, I wish you peace. Be good. Be respectful.